Hi, this is Jason from Etsanic. In this video, I'll take you through the setup process of an Android phone with GrapheneOS. First, we'll go over the initial setup process, then discuss the home screen, app drawer, settings, F-Droid in the Aurora store app markets, how to use a firewall, VPNs, setting up a private DNS, and permissions. This is all in an effort for the average person to set up their device with a privacy focus. I've provided timestamps in the description in case you want to move ahead to a particular chapter. I have a summary near the end that gives you a rundown of the video. I try to go slow in my tutorials so they're easy to follow. If you find I'm going too slow, feel free to change the speed in settings. So what is GrapheneOS? GrapheneOS is a security and privacy-focused Android operating system. It's developed as a non-profit, open-source project concentrating on making substantial improvements to sandboxing, exploit mitigation, and permissions in Android. With a new installation, the operating system is free of spying apps and services. These are normally installed on phones that you would buy from a provider like Bell or T-Mobile. That means that all Google apps and background services, bloatware like Facebook and Amazon, and fishy mobile provider and manufacturer apps have been removed. GrapheneOS has made efforts to strip unnecessary code. This type of code can be considered a weakness point for hackers. There's a strong app sandbox and a hardened app runtime that completes a number of security checks each time an app is opened. Overall, there are too many improvements to really go over here, but there is a link in the show notes for a comprehensive list. Overall, GrapheneOS can be considered the most secure and private Android operating system available for the average person. You can install GrapheneOS on certain Pixel models of phones by yourself, but if you don't want to go through the learning curve, you can also purchase these directly from Etsanic.com. I want to show you how easy these devices are to set up and use, and then hopefully give you some information to decide if such a device is for you. So let's go on to the rest of the video. For the first part, let's do a screenshot tour showing the setup after a new installation. So most steps here are exactly the same as a phone that you would purchase from a mobile carrier, with a few exceptions. Okay, we're on the first screen here, and you'll see this message each time you power on your phone. It's a standard security notification indicating that the original stock Android operating system that came with the phone has been replaced with something else. So in this case, it's GrapheneOS. Okay, on this page, the first time you power on the device, it's going to take a few minutes to set up. In subsequent restarts, this time is going to be significantly reduced. On these screens, you can set the language by scrolling through the options, and then set up the time zone, date, and time from the drop-down menu options. Here it lists available Wi-Fi networks. I've redacted those here. Once you select a Wi-Fi network, you can enter in the password. On this screen, it's asking to use cell data for the setup of the phone. And for this, I select no, as I always set up my phone connected to Wi-Fi. If I had an unlimited data plan or didn't have access to Wi-Fi, then I would select yes. Okay, location services, you can toggle this on or off. To be safe, I deny it here, and then set up individual location permissions for each app in settings once the phone has been set up. So I'll go over location settings later on in the permissions chapter. Here you can set a lock so people can't access the contents of your phone. I'm using a Pixel 3a XL, which has a fingerprint reader, but other phones like the Pixel 4 have replaced the fingerprint reader with face recognition. If you have a phone like that, then you'll only be able to set a PIN, pattern, or password. On this page here, and to use this feature, you'll need to have the backup file on your device or on a USB stick connected with a USB on-the-go adapter. I won't go over how to restore a backup as it's really beyond the scope of this video. Okay, this is the final setup screen before it fully loads to the home screen. So once this setup process is complete, you won't have to do it again. The phone will boot up to the home screen each time. So now the phone has fully loaded and we're on the home screen. Just like a stock Android operating system, you can move and change the icons, make changes to the wallpaper, and add widgets. You can also install launchers like Launcher or Nova Launcher, which offer more customization options as compared to the stock launcher. In the app drawer, there's a minimal list of apps, including ones unique to GrapheneOS. So these are the Auditor, the PDF Viewer, and Vanadium apps. The Auditor uses hardware security features to validate the integrity of the operating system from another Android device. So you need two phones with the Auditor app installed on them to go through the process. It's going to verify that there's been no tampering with the operating system and that the bootloader is locked. So a bootloader is essentially a series of instructions that's responsible for booting or loading the phone's operating system. I have a link in the description to the official GrapheneOS tutorial on how to use the Auditor. The PDF Viewer app is a security-hardened PDF reader. It operates in a sandbox and doesn't require any permissions. A sandbox is a service that allows you to run an application isolated from the rest of the operating system, all other apps, and files on your device. The reason why you'd want a sandbox is because some PDF files are malicious and have hacking code built into them. Opening one could damage your phone and the data it contains. So having the app run in a sandbox prevents the malicious code from running outside of the sandbox and impacting your device. Vanadium is a security and privacy-hardened web view and internet browser. WebView allows third-party apps to show content pulled from the web. So the WebView service is normally provided by Google. Vanadium fixes any potential privacy concerns surrounding this. So even if you install another browser onto your device, you'll benefit from the Vanadium WebView. In settings, the categories and the individual specifications are essentially the same as any Android device. So things like connected devices, display, sound, accessibility, location, and system. You can install additional apps via F-Droid and the Aurora store markets. So to install F-Droid, go to the F-Droid website, download the APK file, and install it via the File app. Once F-Droid has loaded and it's updated its repositories, search for Aurora Store and then install it. F-Droid offers apps that are free and open source. They don't ask for questionable permissions, nor do they contain trackers or share personal data. Aurora Store allows you to privately install most apps found on the Google Play Store and without having to log into a Google account. I have a link in the description to Atsanic's full F-Droid and Aurora Store tutorial if you want to check that out. GrapheneOS includes a built-in firewall. So a firewall allows you to limit or completely block access from a device to the internet. In the case of GrapheneOS, it allows you to control access on an app-by-app basis. By disabling an app's internet access, you can prevent it from sending you ads or sharing personal data via the app's coding or trackers. There's a link in the description to the Exodus Privacy website. It explains trackers, how they collect data about your activities on your device, and then share it with third parties. So a potential downside to disabling access, if an app needs internet to function, so for example a video streaming app, then obviously it won't work as intended. Enabling access will allow proper function, but the trade-off is that you could be sharing private data via the app's coding and those trackers. That's why it's important to choose apps that don't contain trackers and ask for a bunch of questionable permissions. Exodus Privacy has a comprehensive database and provides information on the number and type of trackers and permissions that an app has. So let's do a search for an app. Here you can see the name and general category of the trackers in TikTok. There are links in Exodus Privacy provided for more information on each tracker and its category. Also in the video description, there's a link to the Atsanic website for a list of recommended privacy-focused app replacements that you can check out. To use Firewall, navigate to the app drawer, Settings, Apps and Notifications, and then see All Apps. Here you'll see a list of apps installed on your device. So select an app, choose Permissions, and then see if Network is listed under Allowed or Denied. If you choose Deny, it's going to block both Wi-Fi and mobile access for that app. I found in a few isolated cases that some apps will crash if you block their network access with the firewall, even if it doesn't seem to be some sort of core need for the app to have network access. So if you come across something like this, you're going to have to make the decision to allow access or find another app that doesn't need network access to work. If you want to block background access, then go to Mobile Data and Wi-Fi. Here you can use the toggle to disable or enable background data. Background means that an app can be using data even when you're not actively using the app. Its primary use is for syncing and keeping your apps updated with your latest message, email, or calendar notification. So most apps found on the Google Play Store and downloaded from the Aurora store also use background data to send tracker data. My suggestion is to limit background access, unless you require an app to provide notifications. Okay, onto the chapter onto VPN. So a VPN, or virtual private network, encrypts your internet traffic and makes it more difficult for third parties to track your online activities and possibly steal data. The encryption takes place in real time and occurs between your device and the VPN service. There's a lot of conflicting information about what makes a good VPN. So some VPNs are free while others are paid. Some log their traffic, some promise that they won't, and some are outright fly-by-night companies. I have an article in the description that further discusses VPNs, why they're important, and what to look for in a service. There are a number of free VPNs like Calyx, RiseUp, and Proton that you can find on F-Droid. These are very easy to set up, and for most users, they're more than suitable. For myself, I always use a VPN when connected to public Wi-Fi, like in a coffee shop or airport. In these circumstances, if you don't use a VPN, then things like emails and sometimes passwords won't be encrypted. They could be intercepted and read by the person or organization who owns that Wi-Fi connection. Some users enable their VPN to run continuously. If you do this, there may be extra drain on your battery and sometimes a decline in network speeds. But that really depends on the chosen VPN. Okay, so another way to improve privacy is to set up an alternate DNS service. DNS is known as the domain name system, so it's essentially the phone book of the internet. A DNS service converts a human-friendly hostname, like at sanic.com, into a computer-friendly IP address, which is a series of numbers like 192.168.1.1. When a user wants to load a web page, a translation has to occur between the hostname that's typed into your browser and the machine-friendly IP address. An IP address is given to each device connected to the internet, so they are used to find other devices connected to the internet. So think of it as how a street address is used to find a particular house. In most cases, your internet or mobile provider provides DNS services. That means they know what websites you visited. Some jurisdictions allow these companies to sell their customers' browsing data for financial gain. In some countries, law enforcement can request this data and implicate people depending on the websites they visited. So that's where you might want to set up a private DNS service on your phone. In GrapheneOS, you do this by going to the app drawer, Settings, Network and Internet, Advanced, and Private DNS. There's a link in the description to an Sanic page that lists a number of free private DNS services. If you are interested in one, please test it. I've used some that have slowed pages from loading, while others have actually sped that process up. It's really going to depend on the service that you choose and your location. Okay, on to app permissions. So if you're like most people, you've probably installed apps and just agreed to the requested permissions. Everyone's hope is that an app developer won't abuse this access, but there's been many examples where this actually does occur. Companies like Google and Facebook can use data and algorithms to create a very personal and detailed profile about you. Sometimes the data is exposed in hacks, and sometimes it's used for unethical purposes. That's why you want to have a solid understanding of permissions. There are a few ways to access them, but the way I use is to go to the app drawer, Privacy, and Permission Manager. Here you're provided with a list of categories and the apps that have been granted a permission. So select a category, then go through the list of apps and choose to deny, allow, or allow under certain conditions. The Permission Manager has 13 different categories, but within those categories there's a total of 57 individual permissions. So these are essentially hidden unless you research each app using other resources. So one of those resources is Exodus Privacy. So where you can search for an app and determine which of the 57 permissions it's requesting. Unfortunately, Exodus Privacy only lists the permission and provides some general guidance if it could be dangerous. So to find a full description, there is a link in the video description to the Sanic website on app permissions. Another way of accessing permissions is to go to App Drawer, Setup, Apps and Notifications, See All Apps, and then select an app. Then select Permissions and choose to approve or deny them. When you decide on a permission, ask yourself if it seems valid for the purpose and functioning of the app, and if you feel comfortable granting that type of access. For example, an audio recording app will need access to the microphone to record and files and folders to save recordings. I have a podcast app that requires access to sensors because when you shake the phone, it allows you to reset the sleep timer. The Signal messaging app needs access to your SMS messages to send and receive those messages. It also needs access to the microphone and camera for audio and video chats. So maybe I don't plan ever to use audio or video chats, so I can deny the permission. Or if I think I might infrequently use that feature, I can choose for the app to ask every time for that permission. On the other hand, a weather app probably shouldn't be asking for your microphone and camera access. When you select an app, you can see what permissions are currently allowed or denied. For the Vanadium web browser, I don't want to give it access to my camera, contacts, location, or microphone. I can select the permission and decide if I want the phone to ask me each time to grant it or outright deny it. For files and folders, I'm going to keep that enabled because I use browsers to download files onto my phone. After testing, if the app isn't functioning the way that you want, you can always grant them permission to see if that helps. So if you're new to all this, a lot of information might have been just thrown at you. I'd like to summarize things here. So number 1, GrapheneOS is an Android operating system that removes all apps and services from big tech companies like Google, Facebook, and Amazon. These apps and services are very difficult, if not impossible, to completely remove from any device purchased from a mobile provider. 2. GrapheneOS eliminates or significantly reduces the amount of personal data collected and shared by apps and services. The amount will ultimately depend on the number and type of apps you install and the permissions that you give them. 3. GrapheneOS has a built-in firewall that can completely block an app's access to the internet, including the type of data sharing mentioned previously. 4. Installing a VPN and enabling private DNS settings can also greatly increase your privacy and security on the device. 5. GrapheneOS significantly improves the Android security model by hardening key aspects of the operating system. It's designed for people who greatly value security and privacy. 6. And finally, a phone with GrapheneOS meets its full potential when paired with the concept of digital minimalism. Here you decide on a core set of functions for your phone and then completely customize it so it meets those needs. So that concludes the tutorial. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to watch it. I really hope that you found it useful. It's important to mention that a phone with GrapheneOS won't make you completely anonymous. Your mobile provider can always track your location, whether you use a smartphone or a flip phone. Those devices must connect to cell towers in order to make and receive calls. If 100% privacy is your goal, then it's best not to use a mobile phone of any kind. But by purchasing or setting up a phone with GrapheneOS and then taking the steps listed in this tutorial, you're going to greatly increase your security and privacy, especially from trackers and spying by big tech companies and other third parties. On the Ethereum website, under the Resources section, there's an easy-to-follow, point-by-point list on how to set up a phone with GrapheneOS and make the best use of its privacy features. The list on the website and this tutorial supplement each other to a great degree. Ethereum also offers a selection of smartphones for sale with the privacy-respecting GrapheneOS or Calyx OS installed. Technology is intrinsically neither good or bad. The key is using it to support your goals and values rather than letting it use you. Again, I hope you found this useful. If you do have any questions or constructive comments, please post those below. Thanks for watching.